Microcosm just turned 30 years old, minutes after I was mistaken to be 26 years old at the coffee shop. So, thank you, strangers. That's great. It's great. I'd love to be mistaken to be that young. Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Elly Blue, the Vice President of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
We are going to celebrate a small milestone.
A big milestone!
In our development.
A huge milestone! 2026 is Microcosm's 30th anniversary.
Yep. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted here.
That's all right. I'm here to keep you on track.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we were going to look back at some of the notable milestones that we've crossed. And, you know, I guess it's interesting. It's not a landmark that I thought we would ever reach because, you know, nobody can plan to make it 30 years with anything.
When did you start believing?
I was waiting for that question to be longer. I would say it was really about 2012 was the point where I'm like, okay, like if we can make it through that year, we can do anything.
Oh my gosh, 2012. Well, let's start at the very beginning, Joe. Mm-hmm. 1996, February, a Cleveland winter.
It was a brutal winter. That was the winter where like the wind... So my house was not super well insulated, and the wind would just come right through the windows, and it was really windy and really cold, and so the wind would like shake the windows. And oof, yeah, that was tough. So I set up Microcosm in my closets. I had two adjoining closets that faced each other. And I stapled up cardboard so the insulation wouldn't fall into the Microcosm boxes. And, you know, really, really little has changed. I guess that's more metaphorical now. But I had a computer with a gigantic CRT monitor. I had basic record-keeping stuff. And, you know, but more than that, I had a vision. So my roommates all worked 9-to-5 jobs, and I worked 4 p.m., and I managed a restaurant. And so I was just home alone a lot, and I usually didn't wake up until after they had gone to work. And so I kind of was left with nothing to do, you know? And so I thought this would be a good way to give myself a reason to get out of bed every day. And that was kind of it at that time. And then, you know, the vision developed behind that, you know, where I was like, okay, I want to develop resources for people like myself that maybe feel like we were lacking resources at fundamental times of our lives. And that's also exactly what we do today.
Was there a moment in those early years when you were like, oh, this is really coming together, this is really a thing?
Yeah, so we had a punk club called Speak in Tongues, and, you know, I could set up behind the bar there, and people were really into it. Like, people would really rifle through the piles, and, you know, but they're like my peers, or they're people I knew, or people I went to high school with, or, you know, like people that had a connection to me. So the very first time where just total strangers would come up and they would browse everything and then buy things, or like really straight-laced looking adults would buy things, and I did not look like much at the time. That was the moment where I'm like, this has legs, like this is gonna go somewhere. And then I began doing it at other clubs and other venues, and that was the moment where I'm like, oh, people are into this.
When did you launch mail order?
Almost immediately. Mm-hmm. Within weeks, I guess. Okay. I would say. Like, I made just like a really simple photocopied mail order catalog, and I printed those in my zines, and I mailed those out, and I would trade it as an ad with other zines. So they would print like I think it was like 3 by 4 inches or so initial catalog, and then they would send me whatever ad they wanted me to print in my zines. And that was how I launched mail order. And so and then I'd get people that would write and be like, oh, can I get a catalog? And then I'd have to like mail them the catalog. You know?
Oh, the 90s.
And, you know, and I had a website, but most people didn't have the internet yet. So it was like, that wasn't viable.
You were an e-commerce early adopter, though.
That's true. Yeah.
Can you tell us, when was that milestone?
That was almost immediate also. I think it was 1997. So PayPal integration really helped because, you know, the major problem, just like take your brain back 30 years, the hesitation is that nobody would trust putting in their credit card on the internet. You know, it's because it's like feels really insecure, and to some degree it was really insecure. And so it would be the problem where, like, for the longest time, and still to this day, people would go to our website, make their order, print out the order form, and then mail it in with cash because that was more secure than like inputting your credit card, you know. And my friend Will and my friend Mark and my friend Greg all helped make these like early prototype websites, and then one of them would see like the deficits, and then they would add more features, and you know, they were just like really into what I do, and it really helped. You know, and it's like anytime anybody's into what you're doing and is motivated enough to make it better, that's really encouraging. And
it seems like that like ethos was baked in from the beginning, like 30 years ago. Like it was never just you kind of doing this super heroic feat alone. It was always people showing up and being like, what can I do?
Yeah, that is true. People would witness it. And I think that was part of like being at the bar and at the club. People would see it and be like, oh, this is cool. Like they saw it as more like a community project or effort or barn raising. And then they would think of ways they could plug in and help. And like lots of people were like, oh, okay, like here's my zine masters. Like you can publish my zine. And it's like an astonishing amount of trust.
It still feels like that a lot.
It still is. It's more than ever.
All right, what's the next big milestone? Was it moving to Portland?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like that was the trouble. You know, Cleveland has its limitations. A lot of it is, you know, you get a lot of people coming through, but it's kind of a closed circuit. And so when I moved to Portland a few years later, that was when, you know, there was a different kind of reception. Portland has and had a lot more of a like open community culture of the kind of publishing that I was doing. Cleveland, you know, I could put this stuff into stores, but there weren't really stores that specialized in it, versus when I came to Portland, there's tons of stores that specialize in like cool, weird, independent publishing, you know, and, you know, and they get a lot more, you know, they got tourism, which like Cleveland at that time did not really get tourism.
Right.
So I could put stuff in a store, and then people would come through from literally like Germany or Nebraska or Florida or, you know, like Sweden. And then I would get mail order because of that, where they would say like, oh, I found it here and I didn't get these other ones and I want to get these now.
And then when did you put out the first book?
So the first book was pretty quickly. Originally, and I don't even know, we have very different minds on this. The Urban Hermit, who has gone by a variety of names over, let's say, 30 years, we were pen pals for the longest time, and then I was like, this is a real writer, like, is doing great work, you know, I feel like should be published broadly, and isn't. So I was like, oh, so like, do you want to do a book? And Hermit wrote back and was like, yeah, sure, I'll come to Portland and we'll like hammer it out. Our industry is run by billionaires and conglomerates.
At Microcosm, we wanted the freedom to independently sell our books easily pay royalties, manage our inventory, and understand our business all in one place.
That's why we've been using our own software since 2001.
Now, we want to share it with you.
Working Lit is the only business success software that is created and owned 100% by publishers for publishers.
Join Working Lit and get the agency you need to help your business grow.
Visit workinglit.com to try it for free. The Flow Chronicles, we have, through some data mishaps, about 10 copies still in our warehouse.
Get them while you can.
And that book, despite coming out, decades and decades ago, there are still people that come up to me and are like, this is my favorite book of all time. Thank you so much for making this book. And I'm like, we had no idea what we're doing. That book is full of typos. We didn't
part of the charm.
Know how to do anything back then. I'm glad, and it's like a queer book about trying to find community and culture that resonates with you, and kind of like striking out everywhere you go, or finding out that like every subculture is like equally full of shit, and then you kind of have to like settle on your own values. And and so like I get it why that would resonate with people, is because like lots of idealistic people, including myself, found that to be true. And then you get to a point when you're like, oh, it's on me.
So then what? How did Microcosm grow next?
So then
What year are we in, by the way?
So like by 2002, we like kind of figured out that doing a ton of doing essentially what would be called like package author tours, but doing them in the same way that I had done punk tours with bands would make the most sense, because we could promote ourselves aggressively and have like the whole catalog for sale, and then we could use punk venues instead of bookstores, because that's kind of always where I'd been best received. And then honestly, that was how we started getting invited to book fairs. That's how we started getting a lot of authors. That's how we started getting a ton of mail order. And that was when we were seen as like quote unquote big and successful. And so then magazines started wanting to interview me, because it was like, it's sort of the smoke and mirrors illusion of this thing that came from nothing, has thousands of people that are stakeholders in it, and, they want to know what you think about things.
And by that point you had like other paid staff, you were paying yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
It was, had become a real business.
Right.
Unbeknownst, or perhaps unplanned by you.
And that was not the intention. It was more that I was like still kind of looking for a reason to get out of bed every day, but I didn't want to make, I kind of saw it as like everything else I did was distracting from doing Microcosms. So then I was like, okay, I should just focus on that.
I mean, it does seem like the early 2000s were this like amazing time for you and for Microcosm.
I mean, I'd say the whole time was. I'd say like the 90s were, the 90s were a great time in that you could literally have a storefront for no money where people would come out to have something to do, and your landlord didn't really give you too much guff about the hole you put in the floor, Whereas things did get a lot harder. I guess the big difference, the 90s and the early zeros were both important because there wasn't the incredible volume of competition for attention that you had by, say, like, even 2012.
So then, take us from this sort of, heyday of, great popularity and success to 2012.
Right. So we did a package tour every year for a while. And by for a while, actually, yeah, I think we did one every year from, 96 to 2017, I think
2016 was the last one.
Oh, no, we went to England.
Oh, you're right, we did. Mm-hmm. You're right. Mm-hmm.
And so, there was a good run on that. That was, a really effective formula. Met lots of people that way, did hundreds, thousands of shows, Thousands of shows.
Which is
kind of wild to think about. And then things like Etsy, and I don't mean to single out Etsy, but it's like indicative of something where suddenly there was a lot more e-commerce. Like somewhere between 1996 and 2012, other people figured out e-commerce.
And how to put their zines online. So you were no longer like the only zine purveyor.
And it wasn't just zines, it was like...
And books.
You know, it was like television streaming and video games, and, you know, like there were just lots more things fighting for your dollar and your attention, whereas, you know, we were not one of the first 20 websites. We were probably within the first 500 websites. But, you know, compared to whatever, there's probably, you know, a billion websites today. You know? It's like totally. That's a very different statistic for a person's attention. And so we had to just do a lot more marketing. We had a lot more people, you know, and when you have history, you just have a lot more people that you've had to say no to. You've had to have a lot more people that you're like, sorry, we can't be all things to all people. We can't publish your book. And, you know, you become storied in a way where by 2010, it was like everybody I met had a story about Microcosm, and I loved that. But they didn't see us as vitally needing their support like they did in, say, like 2000, you know, when like we could literally say we need $4,000 and people would just mail us checks, you know, whereas like we probably couldn't do that today, you know. But I don't know, you know. And so by 2012, I think you become, and I think that was the first, we did 27 books that year, and that was the first time where, you know, we were like, oh, okay, right, like we're seen as this like establishment publisher, which is very funny. And, you know, we had done Kickstarters starting in 2010. We just kind of had to more aggressively ensure our future existence, whereas every year before that, it just felt like we could do nothing and people would order every single day, all day long. Wow. And it just took a more concerted effort.
And was it 2010 or 2011 when you signed with IPG? And
2011.
What did that mean for Microcosm?
So, well, I mean, and I guess it's like we had worked with distributors before that. They weren't the first, but so we outsourced our distribution for the first time in 2002 to National Book Network, and we re-signed we had other relationships in that 9-year span, but we went to Independent Publishers Group in 2011, and I think the thinking was that the limitations we were seeing were caused by lack of market access, and so we thought having a distributor would solve that problem, but it kind of puts you inside a lot of other noise that isn't really related to what you're doing. But
it did get Microcosm on like a distribution schedule.
That's true, right? That didn't, and I don't know if that didn't exist in 2002 to 2011, or we just weren't doing it. And that's, you know, and that's really funny, right? Like if we were just like, we're doing it wrong, or if that wasn't something, yeah. Readers, please let me know if you're my age, what.
But also, like, I think, you know, working with Mark Sukamel at IPG at the time, like,
genius.
I sat there in some of those meetings, which often happened in the Amtrak lounge, where Mark would like go through the covers Joe had designed and been like, you need to be bolder. This one needs to fill up the entire page. Like, your books are too demure. You need to believe in yourself. And that was transformative.
Yeah, and that was the big thing with IPG, is they made us take ourselves more seriously in a way that we hadn't previously. So that's kind of a fascinating thing that happens with the distributor, whereas before it just kind of felt like we served a community. We could kind of do whatever. They would be like, oh, this is the new Microcosm thing. Oh, okay, cool. Whereas when we worked with IPG, they said, there's a whole big world out there. You might want to pay attention to them as well.
Yeah, and then I don't think we need to get into all of the distribution shenanigans until 2019, but yeah, talk a little, what happened in 2012? I remember 2012 well.
There was a major market crash, so that was sort of, and it was one of the only years when book sales by dollar went down. So every year, book sales by dollars just kind of climbs steadily with the population, like it grows, 1 to 3%, give or take. And in 2012, there was a dip. And that was sort of the first time that the industry started to panic or, depending who you ask, pivot. And that was the first time when we, not including myself, but the industry at large expected ebooks to kind of crush print. And then, as you all know, that didn't happen. And so we had done a lot of books. We had done a really heavy season. I resumed. I had not managed the company from 2005 to 2012, and then I became the principal. I became the manager of the company again in 2012, partly due to difficulties that they were having with money and dealing with. It's really fun to run a publishing company until you find out that there's results and responsibilities that come with every decision that you make, which, tell me about it.
Yeah. A lesson we've learned over and over.
Yes, and continue to learn.
For the next 30 years as well,
yeah.
Yes.
And so that really redirected, and we changed. Mark had a really cool fight with Amazon almost immediately after we signed on, and that was really encouraging. It really felt like we were in the right place. He wouldn't bow to new terms, and he won the fight. And then IPG even paid back lost revenues to publishers. Really awesome. And so that was great. We said, this is wonderful. But we increasingly felt we changed distributors again. And then we really felt the constrictions of that model. And so we went back to self-distributing. We made the decision in 2018. And then we became effectively our own distributor again. So it was like a throwback to our earliest days and our middling days, where we had sort of a hybrid version of distribution from 2006 to 2011 as well.
Okay. And so, 2019. So I joined in 2015, and you had already been managing the company again for a couple of years, and you were growing it very steadily, very healthily. Mm-hmm. And then 2019, when we went independent again, it was the graph went vertical.
Yeah, that we more than doubled that year, and then the following year, and then the following, and we were like, oh, this is kind of wild.
And then the pandemic, I guess everybody knows.
That was great for book sales and hard for emotions.
And bodies.
Yeah. We built this software from scratch to solve our own problems starting in 2001.
It's not only the reason for our survival, but the reason we've been a Publishers Weekly fastest growing publisher 3 years in a row.
Now, we want to share it with you.
Join Working Lit and get back the agency to understand your publishing business, market and sell your books, and painlessly pay royalties.
Working Lit, doing the math for publishers.
Visit workinglit.com to give it a try for free.
We never really expected to make it 3 years, let alone 30 years. And that's been, I don't know, and I think a lot of it is we set out to solve a problem from the very beginning, or two problems, my personal problem of not being able to get out of bed, and the world's problem of not having resources that spoke to them in their experience. Solved them both.
Well, it's an honor to get to be involved, even if it's only been for a third of the history of Microcosm.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you'll be around for more than a third in time.
That's the plan every year. What do you predict for the next 30 years of Microcosm?
Oh, 30 years. Okay, got it. So a small prediction.
Uh-huh.
I think, honestly, what will happen is that we will become increasingly focused on certain subjects and shelves and categories, and we will increasingly control the market share around specific things, whereas a lot of the downside of the pandemic was we became quite a bit more of a generalist, and being a generalist is difficult in publishing, if even bad, because then people don't know what to know you for, versus we're now moving back in the direction of subjects and categories that we've been historically strong in, and I think we will continue to do that. And I look forward to watching this in 30 years and being like, oh, I was right about that and wrong about that.
Do you intend to still be CEO in 30 years?
No, that would be a disservice to everybody involved if I was still at that point.
Who will be running Microcosm in 30 years?
I have my eye on 3 different people, and it will probably be none of them, because 30 years is a long time away, and you don't know what'll come up in people's personal lives between now and then. But there's a lot of really qualified young people that are at the helm, jumping at the bit, doing important high-level matters now.
Do you think it'll still continue to be a group effort?
In what way?
Well, the way it always has been.
Yeah. You can't grow something and make it more singular, other than, your focus should be more singular, but you sort of need the brain trust, because otherwise what happens, especially as you age, you sort of lose focus on the right things, versus what you need to be doing is kind of have somebody to reroute you back to the purpose and the goals and where you're misstepping.
Do you have any parting thoughts about 30 years of being in business?
Listen to young people who are invested in what you do, because they know the answers to all of your problems. They don't know it, and they will not explain it in explicitly clear narratives, but they will absolutely be able to tell you every time you are misstepping or when you should do more of something.
Oh, well, congratulations, Joe.
Thank you.
The thing you've built, it's got legs.
I never thought of this as my accomplishment, but yeah, I guess it is to some degree my accomplishment.
You're one of the only people I know who's had the same job for 30 years.
My sister.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.